Gurney Norman served as Kentucky Poet Laureate in 2009 through 2010. Gurney Norman is the author of Divine Right's Trip, a novel, Kinfolks, a collection of short stories, and Ancient Creek, an original Appalachian folk tale. He has co-edited 2 collections of essays, Back Talk, Confronting the Appalachian Stereotypes, and An American Vein, Critical Readings in Appalachian Literature. Norman and his wife, editor-publisher Nyoka Hawkins, operate Old Cove Press, a regional literary press which has published 3 books of poems by Frank X. Walker, Appalachia, Black Box, and Isaac Murphy. I dedicate this ride. In 2011, Berea College granted him an honorary Doctor of Humane Letters degree. Please welcome Gurney Norman, who will read.
I'm glad my friend Ed McClanahan is here. I'm going to read an excerpt from a longer piece, and I'll call this excerpt Cumberland Gap Railroad Tunnel. Well, I should say that late in my mother's life, we developed the practice of taking long drives together, all down through the mountains. And she and my father had met at Lincoln Memorial University at Harrogate, which is just a mile from Cumberland Gap. And I learned from her that on their first date, when they were 20, they went on a hike, which took them down into the town of Cumberland Gap and through the railroad tunnel. I asked her if maybe they stopped for a little kiss back in that tunnel. She said yes. When I walked into the tunnel alone the first time, the dark and the quiet appealed to me immensely. It felt deeply natural to me to be alone in a dark, moist world inside the earth. My father and grandfather and several uncles had all worked in the mines at one time or another, so I'd been in coal mines many times. The cool air, the sweet smell of cold, wet stone, the lingering odor of old smoke from the days of the steam engines were familiar sensations. I carried a flashlight, but I didn't use it until in the middle of the tunnel, I decided I wanted to get a look at the rivulet of water flowing beside the tracks. All the way in from the entrance, I hadn't been able to see a thing, but I had heard water trickling. And it seemed to make a different sound at that midpoint in the tunnel. I wanted to see why that might be. At first, I couldn't believe my eyes, but then there was no mistaking. From a little pool of water no bigger than my 2 cupped hands, 2 rivulets flowed in opposite directions. I shined my light on the water that ran back the way I had come. Then I shined it on the other stream, bubbling toward the far end of the tunnel. Separate streams from a single source. Neither stream was more than 3 inches wide, but for a moment I felt as if the very Mississippi had somehow divided, as if the laws of nature had been repealed. As I sat there in the dark listening to the water, I felt awed by it, awed by the mountain and its dark passageway, awed by time and by space, awed by the fact that my parents, young students on their first date, had once upon a time passed through the very underground space I now occupied. They were part of the human history of that mountain, and now so was I. Perhaps here where the waters divided was where they had paused for their kiss. It pleased me very much to think so. It filled me with joy to be that close to my mother and father in that dark place. In an uncanny way, I felt that I had been there with them when they kissed, and that they were there with me now. Thank you.